Hello there, it's me again, and what we are going to do now is to give an example of how we can actually use the art gallery template that I just loaded. So you can see that I am loading a few pictures and videos about Pablo Picasso, and I'm going to just talk a little bit about the artist, and this will also serve as an example of how we can use this virtual environment as a presentation tool. So let me just try to get into a proper mood here for doing this art critic stuff. So when I was very young, as a child, and reading about Picasso and looking at his paintings, of course, the very first thing that Picasso is known for is, sometimes very abstract modern paintings which are not very intelligible to a child. And when you look at his paintings, that I came to know only later on. When you see, if you're interested in that sort of things, you look at the paintings that he was actually making very early on, say when he was in his teen years. They were already very technically, technically perfect. Well, I don't know if that's the right term, but he really had the skills to make what I would describe as paintings that appear realistic, that are basically a linear representation of things, of objects, of people. So that's like a portrait of Picasso's mother. There's nothing abstract about it. It looks like a photograph. It looks like a picture, to a certain extent. And then later on, you have paintings like this one. I think it's 3 figures, 3 persons, and a tree, and a branch, I think. And you can see that there's been a change in style, and a change in the way he was thinking of representing things. So I wouldn't have been. I still am not able to guess, what he was trying to show here. But if I look at it as like a puzzle, you can, maybe it's interesting. This reminds me of another painting in a different period. We'll talk about the different periods later on. Let me see if these pictures load fairly quickly. I'm going to show you one painting which is abstract, and which also, to a child's, mind, appears like a puzzle. So that's like the pink period. We are not too much interested in that for the moment. Let us see whether it would be in this one. Okay. So that's another painting, which kinds of, at least shape-wise, looks very similar to the one that I showed before, with the 3 people in a branch. And in this one, you can see that there are 2 people, one lying down, which is probably a woman, based on the gestures and feelings, but we'll never know. I'm more inclined to say it's a woman. And then there is another person here that's stretching, and it looks like it's I would guess it's a man, and maybe it doesn't matter. But the interesting thing here, it's a painting that I quite like, actually, at least the colors that were used, etc. And But the most interesting aspect to me is the fact that there were these two figures hidden in it. Maybe that was interesting to me, because then you start thinking whether there is something else that's hidden in other parts of the painting. Okay, so that's one narrow way of looking at this picture. Okay, of course there's something to be said about looking at pictures and trying to take it all in without using too much of the mind, and only try to to listen to your heart, if I may use that term. Basically no mind stuff, just sit there and look at the painting and see whether it talks to you. So let me just go back. All this was only to show that this guy, he seems to have been all over the place in terms of styles, and so maybe he was like a massive innovator. Just like many of his peers as a modern artist, they really wanted to try hard to represent things that photographs or pictures won't be able to. And I guess as a goal, he was very, very successful in achieving that. And you can also see that he was also influenced by other artists. I guess this one, I would say that there is some Salvador Dali influence in this painting, where you have, and I think that he made it during the later stages. And you can see, I don't think he's known for using very bright, happy colors. I may be wrong, maybe later on in his life. But when he was young, he actually had a lot of events in his life that were not very happy. Okay, so there's one plate here that I just skipped over that I think is interesting, since we are talking about the primary goal of painting for many of his peers, or many people in the modern art movement. I would say they would try to move away from trying to represent an object or a thing or a person or an animal very linearly, and move beyond that, that urge to try and accurately represent as seen by everybody else, into something more personal. So when you move into the personal realm, of course you're trying to represent more of your own mind stuff and overlay it on top of the object, and you're trying to represent not what's out there but what's in there to some extent. So we have this picture of the cow, and he must the artist must have, in this case Picasso, must have felt strongly about some particular aspects of this object and extract it and try to represent it in a very minimal way, what he was feeling about this particular object. So here we have like a minimal representation of the cow. So you have the head, the horns, and the tail, the legs, and even the sexual organs. Okay, so basically that's my understanding of as a layman, interested in art. Sometimes you read about this stuff and then you try to make sense of what's going on. I have a movie clip here that was loaded. I think it moved on. Just to get a feel of how the person appeared. Let's try to listen to him. Let me.
Pablo Picasso.
No, he's speaking in French, and he's talking about how he loves people, and you know, and he's being asked whether he likes television, and he's, you know, basically it's a conversation. And I think the ability to have these videos together with the pictures and that you can access, you know, fairly fluidly, that adds to the presentation value of a virtual environment. And then it keeps the context very soft and fluid, because you can shift from, you know, from one aspect of the presentation and then go back and revisit stuff that you have talked about. Okay, so you know, art critics or art historians have the habit of, well, it's not a habit, it's part of the job. They have to look at the body of work of an artist and then try to organize it in different periods, and usually it can be, you know, organized according to styles, or according to time periods, or according to well, they can choose pretty much any category. But what stood out for this particular painter with Picasso is, and you know, that those categories are the blue period and the rose period, and these tended to be associated with years. And Picasso was known to be somebody who would go from one period to the other, and he would consistently maintain, you know, his activities in a particular period. He was quite good at that. The only problem is that for people who were around him, so you better make sure that when he's actually shifting from one period to the next, that you're not around, because if you're his friend, he might just ditch you and go and find something, you know, something else, something new, etc. And there's a lot of people, especially women, who have suffered as he was making those transitions, because he would, at the end of a particular period, he might actually find that, you know, everything in that period, well, is boring, and he's going to leave everything and go to the next one. Okay, let me just pause this video here. I know it's not ideal to have to do this, but that's not a complex problem. We'll find a solution later on. Okay, so here we have the blue period, and it also coincides with a time where things were pretty sad in his personal life. There were lots of, you know, friends dying and stuff like that, and you can see all the paintings kind of reflect that mood, and all these paintings are blue, and you can also see some transitions happening where he's actually moving from, you know, soft boundaries between objects, and now you have like hard lines, etc. So it's turning into like more cartoonish representations. But it's still pretty much, you know, it's sticking to his original roots, where the paintings were, you know, appeared like classical paintings, and you can see that at the same time that he's changing. And then we have the pink period, which is from 1904 to 1905. I don't know whether the pink period was a happier one for him, but in any case, the colors are brighter, and it's kind of funny when people, you know, decide to name a particular period, because in this painting, for example, you have a lot of blue, you know, blue and pink. But anyway, that's the pink period, and you can see that he's already trying to explore, you know, cubism here. He's moving into that realm, and well, So for people who are fans of you know, the linear kind of representation, or fans of the kind of art where what really mattered was inaccurate representations of what's out there, you know, this won't be too attractive unless you're able to extract those deeper meanings. Okay. So this one, I believe, is like it's supposed to be women having a bath, and you will notice that I don't remember titles for these paintings, because I think that it's perhaps better just to not bother too much about the titles. And one thing is, you know, it's perhaps better to look at the paintings themselves and try to make sense of it without the titles. I do remember this one. I think it's Demoiselle d'Avion, and I may be wrong, but that's what it is. And a lot of the paintings give us some clues with, you know, the kind of people that he was hanging around with at that period. So I think these people are from the circus, and there was this monkey here. The other thing you might notice is that, you know, he's not a slave to, well, we know that, to linear representations and trying to make things, well, he's not too obsessed with trying to make things look exactly like it is in reality. So you'll find that his hands, for example, maybe illustrate more the, you know, other things than what you would expect from a drawing of a hand. You know, maybe it conveys some feelings and the kind of, you know, gentleness that the baby is being held, and every hand gesture has a meaning. It's kind of like the mudras in Oriental paintings. Well, that's just my take. I may be completely wrong, and I think artists make their works of art, and every critic is I guess valid. You know, it doesn't matter. This is yours. So this is the proto-cubism era where he starts really experimenting with breaking down the laws of perspective. And this is a scene with a lot of buildings, but you can see that all the lines don't meet at, I mean, typically when the basic rules of perspective require that you have a vanishing point, and there are lines that actually meet at one point, and that would be the vanishing point. But here it's difficult to see, you know, any structure in terms of, you know, where vanishing points and stuff like that. So the rules of perspectives are broken, and yet, you know, the image, you know, does seem to hold together. And he tries to experiment, you know, with in addition to static objects like buildings, he's looking at people as well. Okay, let's move to the last period here. Well, that's not really the last period in his career, but it's certainly, you know, an important one. So the realism and surrealism period, where you can actually see, you know, all these various styles coexisting, and it's very interesting to me to have all these different streams happening during the same period. This one is supposed to be a girl throwing a stone. As you can see, it's not something that would come to your mind immediately, but that's what it is. And I like the sketch that he has here. It's Well, the one thing I like with this picture is that it's very difficult to say in words why it is so beautiful. I like the way there's a lot of balance in it. There's not one aspect of the painting that appears to be out of shape, and you have the hand following the contours of the face, and you have the hair locks, etc. And the lines appear very how do you say that? It's not tentative, it's very firm, and it seems that when he was drawing it, he knew exactly where the lines would go. So there was a certain intensity in I think that intensity appears through or can be felt when you look at the painting. And yet the painting evokes the picture of a very sensitive, soft woman. So I'll stop here. I think my main aim was to show that you can have a virtual environment and use it as a presentation tool, in a sense. So here's my avatar. I can walk around. I'm hoping in the future maybe to have similar discussions about artworks, but with a group of people where it will be more interesting, so that we can actually, look at various pieces of art and discuss. Okay. Thanks for your attention, and hope to see you to have another clip soon. Take care. Bye.